Let's talk about game law, Bethesda, and modders that abuse the word law. Now, I always think law is something that's already in the game. If it's not already in the game, it's not law. So if you want to make a law-friendly mod, you have to use something that's already in the game. It's not enough to paint these chocolate cookies a brassy colour and say they're Dwemer cookies. Right? You can't get away with that. I can't paint this a brassy colour and say it's a Dwemer joystick. Right? Because there are no joysticks in the game. Although you probably get cookies in the game, I imagine. Right? So the point is, there's no Dwemer remote control in the game. So it's not law-friendly. If you want to make a law mod, you have to use what's in the game already. So if you use horses from the game, yeah, you could get away with calling it a law mod. Although technically speaking, it's got nothing to do with law. It's just nature, you know. So, but generally speaking, you have to use something in the game. My mods always draw heavily from existing content. You know, background stories, characters, legends, things like that. So my mods used the game law to produce their own stories. So they were law friendly because they supported the law that already exists. I didn't turn up and say, yeah, do a joystick, mate, you know. So it's because there's no joystick in the game already. So if you wanted to make a law mod, you would have to go deep into the game, find something that matched what you wanted to do, and link to that. That's the only way you can make something. It has to be like, for instance, you couldn't say, "Yeah, I was delving deep into a Dwemer ruin when I found Darth Vader's costume and a lightsaber." That wouldn't work because that's already part of a different franchise, and people would have a hard time believing it. But if you were to say, look, I found this suit of armor, right, at the bottom of a Dwemer ruin, and it's the same colour as all the Dwemer stuff, you might just get away with it because Dwemer and armour did go together. They were some of the ones that made the first armour, first heavy armour at least. So, yeah, that works. But you have to know these things in advance. That means you have to do a bit of research and do a bit of reading. You can't just go, I've made the mod, now I'll say it's a law friendly mod, therefore I'll be alright. You can't do that. Now, when I made a Return to Helgen, it was after years of studying various law topics, then going back over them just to make sure I remembered it right when I made the mod. Sometimes I get it wrong, mostly I get it right. And I usually supply a lot of background material so people can see where I got the information from and they can draw their own conclusions as to its accuracy. Because one thing I learned is law is one of those things that changes according to how much you know about it. Right? The more you know, the more you realise you need to learn more. Right? So the least you know, the more confident you are that you know everything. So at the beginning you learn a little bit, oh, I know everything. No, you don't. You're not even touching it. So at the end of the day, it boils down to how much do you know, that's the law. Right? It says then when you learn a bit more, then that's the law. Then you learn a bit more, then that's the law. It's not something you can finally describe as you know everything now because it's expanding constantly. There's lots of different sources adding to it. And unless you're a part of every single group that talks about it, or makes games, or books, or anything, or movies, you can't possibly know everything about it. You just do your best to try and keep up. Many of the topics I've covered over the years, like the Elder Council, with it's based on some of the books that came out for Elder Scrolls between Oblivion and Skyrim, and I kind of used them, but there was a lot of information missing from those books. So we knew it was a warlord that took over and became emperor, but not much else. And then in Return to Helgen, I went with it again because we knew more about it at that point and the Great War and things like that. So the two mods go together because I based it in lore as much as we knew at the time. And the next time I did it was in Helgen. I based that in lore as much as we knew at the time. And when you put them together, they do kind of flow, even though one of them is hopelessly outdated because we've learned a lot more since then. If you play it in order, it still works. That's what law does. It allows mods to continue to work generation after generation because you kept to a theme, you've kept close to where Bethesda said their storyline was. If you come up with something that's not even in the game, like a rifle, and say it's a Dwemer rifle, there's nothing there to link it to that past or the future. It's just an oddity. It's not game law. So I think when you're talking about game law, when you're looking at game law, that connection with what came previously is important. It has to have something in it that can justify its existence. If you were to do a Dwemer robot, you could get away with it because Dwemer make robots, you know? So they've done that, constructs they call them, but you could get away with that. It might seem a bit odd, but you could do it. You could justify it roughly. You could never justify a tank. This is the Dwemer Tiger tank, right? You wouldn't justify. I mean, it might have been possible for them to make one, but you couldn't justify it. You couldn't necessarily justify in a Dwemer train, although technically speaking, it wouldn't be out of place in my opinion. Says, but you couldn't justify it because there's no examples of one in the game. Now, I always found that if you actually do deviate from the game law, eventually you're going to leave a bad taste in the mouth of anybody that tries to make your mod feel like it's part of the game. So when I'm making a mod and I'm trying to follow the game law, I'm trying to get my mod to feel like it's supposed to be in the game. It's always been there. They just never noticed it until now. That's the feeling I'm after. So when people play the game and my mod's not there, they feel like something's missing. They feel like there's a part of the law not there that should be there. That's what I'm after when I make my mods. That's what I aim for. And I think I've been mostly successful at that. I think since I started making law mods, I think I've done it in such a way where most of them do make people feel that way, and they do feel like they can't play the game without my mods. I know for a fact I feel that way. So, and I've had a few comments that suggest other people do as well. So if you make a law mod and it makes people feel like this has always been in the game, you just haven't noticed it, I would say you're on the right track. But just remember, right, law does change according to how much you know. Now, I will give you this freebie law tip. Law changes depending on whether you're an elf or a human. That's the whole basis of all Elder Scrolls law. Are you an elf or are you human? By elf, are you a Dwemer, orc, high elf, are you a wood elf, maybe Argonian, right? Because this is ancient law right there. Or are you human? Because if you're any of them, then your version of the law is different from the other side. Right? Human law and family law, they're opposed. They're opposing each other. So if you understand that one basic principle, you will understand why some law seems to contradict the other. It all makes sense in a kind of half-assed, ass-about-face kind of way. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Just remember, if you want to make a law mod, base it on something that's already in the game. Make it work with something that's established in the game, and you'll be on solid ground. See you in the next one.